In 1907, the country was facing another deepening financial crisis, which led to several banks being on the verge of bankruptcy, leading to hordes of people queuing up around the block to withdraw their money from their bank accounts. The government reportedly had to tell bank tellers to deliberately count the money slower to try and reduce the rate cash was being withdrawn, because if everyone pulled their money out at the same time, it could be catastrophic. By this point, Roosevelt was the president, and as we already know, he certainly did not see eye to eye with John on most things. But the crisis of 1907 was so dire that they both agreed it would be in America's best interest if the government and big business worked together to save the country from falling into a depression. So Roosevelt called on JP Morgan to salvage the situation. Once again, John's strategy was to spend a lot of money where it was needed most. He summoned dozens of the leading financiers and leaders of the nation's biggest banks and trusts to join him in his private library on Madison Avenue and decide on the best course of action. John's plan was essentially for them to invest in their smaller competitors. John concluded that although some banks would inevitably fail, others could still be saved. So he and his associates deposited giant sums of money in a number of banks so that they would be able to pay their depositors and avoid declaring bankruptcy. After revealing his plan, John then locked the door while the bankers negotiated amongst themselves, literally locking them in until they agreed on a resolution. By the morning, everyone had agreed with John's plan, and with Roosevelt's approval, the US Treasury also contributed $25 million, showing the level of trust and respect the president had for John's business sense. What's remarkable is that John was 70 years old at this point and negotiated all of this whilst having a terrible cold, meaning he was constantly coughing and sneezing while saving the US economy. But his plan ultimately worked. Lots of capital was injected back into the economy, public confidence was restored in America's banking system, and yet another economic disaster was averted thanks to John's wheelings and dealings. But whilst he was once again briefly labeled as a hero, almost immediately people began to realize just how dependent they had become on one single man.